Hello and welcome to the Love, Listen, Talk, Repeat podcast. I'm Wendy Capewell, your podcast host, as well as being a counsellor and psychotherapist, author and speaker. In each of these podcast episodes, I'll be joined by various guests, sharing their expertise and experiences on different subjects. So let's get on with this week's show.
How many of you are frustrated parents because your children and you find it hard to communicate? I'm sure there are lots of frustrated parents out there. And today I've got Oona Alexander with me, and she's a leading UK parenting expert. So kindly introduce yourself, Oona, to the audience.
Thank you, Wendy. Yes, I help exasperated, as you say, frustrated parents radically love their children to happiness and naturally great behaviour, which may seem like a different phrase to what you might have expected. But I find that a radically loving approach is the best for creating calm, connected families where everybody gets to feel good about themselves and gets to enjoy family life, which is after all what it's all about. We had children to enjoy family life, didn't we? Yeah.
That's great, and I totally agree with you. It's children can be testing, and I think sometimes, it can feel really difficult when you've asked them the sixth time to do the same thing. But I think, they're always demanding our attention and everything else, and then I think we just get caught up in that loop, don't we? That it just becomes a battle all the time. And I think one of the things you said earlier, we were chatting before, and you said that it's about being compassionate to ourselves.
Yes.
Because we don't get a rule book.
We don't get a rule book, and we're somehow expected to be able to do it. We expect that from ourselves. Yeah. And we set out with the best of intentions and kind of glorious visions of how family life is going to be. And quite soon, I mean, of course, babyhood presents its own challenges, but even as children grow, it can quite quickly become very difficult and very different to what we imagined. And then, of course, the first thing many of us do is to blame ourselves. And of course, that feeds into what can become a kind of negative loop, because when we're putting ourselves down and feeling bad about the job that we're doing, which is a very difficult job, let's not pretend there's anything easy about parenting. We blame ourselves. So I feel the best place to start is kindness towards ourselves and being forgiving towards ourselves, because it's just, if things aren't going well, it's the children are part of the mix. They're in the picture too, and also it's to do with skills and what we've learned from the people who raised us. And very often we want to create something different to what we received as children, but how are we supposed to know how to do that?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And as hard as we might try, I think we will still fall into traps, and we will still repeat either unconsciously the same behaviors, or we'll do something else that doesn't work.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah, exactly. We'll fall back into inner programming that we receive, because it's so deep, this stuff. I don't need to tell you about that, but or we'll react to it, yes, and try and do something very different. And we may find that doesn't work either. And a lot of parents set off wanting to be kind because maybe they didn't receive as much kindness or didn't feel there was as much closeness as they would have liked in their family of origin. And so they set off trying to be kind and trying to be reasonable and so on. But then they find the children's behavior so incredibly unreasonable that it brings up difficult feelings for us as parents. And then we just don't know how to handle that. We think, well, I've done my bit, right? I've done my bit. I've been kind, and doing my best. And yet my child seems to be so unreasonable. And there's that sense of not understanding, could be completely perplexed and out of one's depth. And these are often people, who have had successful careers, managed teams, you know, all this kind of thing. And then there's a 2-year-old in front of them who's just reducing them to tears.
Yes, absolutely, because
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
Yeah, because
I
it
manage a
doesn't.
team, but I can't do this with my child. Why not?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes we just forget that that child hasn't developed the same skills as communication, connecting, all those things that we are thinking as an adult.
Yeah.
Well, why can't they understand? I can understand it, but that child development just hasn't, it's not developed in so many ways, is it? So they
Exactly. We kind of think that with reason and logic and being reasonable will win them over, and we explain things to them. And while it is a good idea to explain things to children, perhaps very briefly, very simply, you know, the briefer, the younger the child, but that's not enough, because children want to feel connected to us. They want to feel understood. I think that's where the key is. So when we're being reasonable with our own point of view, there's the child is going, but I wanted another biscuit, you know, and it's somehow that biscuit or whatever it was is just the most important thing in the world for them then. But also, yeah, being understood in that, wanting the other biscuit.
Yeah.
Which, you know, for an adult isn't a big thing, but for a child,
Yeah, it's huge for a child, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think sometimes that kindness, trying to be kind all the time, that can lead you down that rocky road of not putting in boundaries.
Yeah.
Then I think, I'm sure you know, it's something you recognize a lot, but the children then, they don't know where they are, and they need those boundaries. They're going to kick against the boundaries simply because they need to feel I actually, you care about me. Absolutely. And you're not going to allow me to do that.
Absolutely. And I think there is another trap connected with that, which is that if we want children, you know, we as parents naturally want to make our children happy, but if we want them to be happy all the time, we can communicate that there's something wrong if they're not happy about something, and that can really kind of contribute to cranky behavior. So I think children who become very, very unhappy in a way, paradoxically, very fretful, because you know, parents are trying to make everything better and make it all right for the child. Well, there are sometimes, you know, there is, as you say, something to be disappointed about, because you know, there's been a limit, and that, you know, they can't have the other biscuit or whatever it was. And if I think it's something that when parents grasp that it's okay for my child not to be happy about something, and life, you know, even if it's something that the parent didn't create, you know, a disappointment at school or something like that, and life goes up and down, and the parent is okay with that, they'll bring comfort, empathize and all that. But you know, they're not when it's not helpful to try and fix our children, because then they feel that possibly they shouldn't have been upset in the first place, whereas being upset, disappointed is just part of life.
Totally. And how do we teach children to become resilient and deal with disappointment if they don't experience it in a safe place with their parents around them? Exactly.
It's so important. Yeah. And we can get very anxious when children get upset, but I mean, you know, I am the same, you know, I'm a parent, I'm a mom, I've got a son, and, you know, I want him to be happy. And when there are disappointments, I can feel that urge in me to try and fix it, make it better and all that. And then I have to kind of pull back and remember my own teachings, like, it's okay, you know, he's disappointed, this is life.
Yeah. Otherwise they go out into the big wide world and they just can't cope. It becomes too much for them when they experience it outside of the family, don't they?
Yes, exactly. It's so important. It's such a great preparation for life. It's something about being okay with not being okay.
Yeah.
And I think we parents can also show that to our children, not only in how we comfort them in their upsets, but also how we deal with our own upsets within the home. And, being able to show that we're upset about something, we may not, and reveal that we're not okay right now, but we're okay with that. And we know, that life does this, we'll rise up again. And that feeling frail or vulnerable is part of life.
Yeah.
And,
yeah. Sorry.
Yeah. No, just I think that's not an easy one, because I think we parents often think we have to kind of show ourselves to be strong for our children.
Yes.
And yeah.
So would you say that it's okay for children to see us upset?
I think it is. I think it's really important. I mean, yeah, I think it's okay, because what they then learn is healthy emotional expression, that it's okay to express emotions, that it's normal to be upset.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, children emerge as adults thinking that, right, now I'm an adult, I can't show any emotion anymore. And we know how unhelpful that is. And so, yes, I mean, I think, as long as we're still, it's helpful, I think, if we've still got that sense of, I'm okay with not being okay, rather than I am, if we've completely lost it, that I think that's scary for children, and probably not the best moment to share with them.
Yeah, I think it's a fine line, because I think if you're really in a bad place constantly, then the child is going to struggle with that as well.
Yes, exactly.
Very true. So what are your views about parents who say, and even the children, we're best friends?
That's a very interesting question, and I know there are different views on that. My approach is quite collaborative, so I don't have a hierarchical approach, although obviously, well, not maybe obviously, but I do believe the parents need to be the leader in the family and to show the way. But I actually do believe that well, it's a kind of, you're still the leader, but that you can be friends with your child. And I know many people don't, because they say, well, I'm the one who kind of lays down the rules and leads, lays out how everything is going to be, and my child's not my friend, they're my child. And I think there are also limits to that friendship. I wouldn't expect my child to understand me, have that much interest in me, quite frankly. So it's not a friendship in the normal way.
No.
So, and perhaps you have another view, because I kind of sense maybe that you do have, the opposite view, that, child can't be your friend. But it's also a question of what you mean by friend. My best friend. No. I mean, no. I mean, I live now currently on my own with my 16-year-old son. He's a great companion. I love him to bits. But no, he's not my friend in the way that my girlfriends are my friends. It's very different. And I mean, I'm interested if there was something, was there something in that question that have I answered your question?
I think it's just someone's opinion. I think it's just our perspective. And I think the danger is, I agree, I think you can have a friendship, but as you said, it's not like having a friend who is on the same level, not as a peer. It's different in adulthood. That's a different kind of thing. But I think as you say, we need to be the leader. We need to show that we are leading, not in a authoritarian kind of way. That's it. I think it is in a compassionate way, as you said. But I think there is a danger that if I've seen with younger children that the parent and the child is put so much pressure on the child because the parent will confide in their child and expect that, expect that kind of, I'm having a bad time and I need your support and help. And I think that it can, you've got to find that fine line. Yes, you can be, So I think you can have a friendship, but it is very different. It's not on the same level exactly, because you can't expect a child to behave in the same way as your girlfriend would. You can't go to them with your problems. And you can't expect them to. I think the other thing I see sometimes is that the parent-child role can get reversed in families that aren't functioning particularly well. Maybe the parent is struggling with an issue with their mental health, etc. And it's difficult because I think we get young carers, and that's the other end of the spectrum. But I think if we're relying on our children to be an adult, that's too much. And I think that's where that friendship bit, that's where I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, we can't rely on our children for emotional. I mean, it's not helpful for children if a parent relies on them for emotional support.
Yeah. And of course, when they become adolescents, they want to do their own thing anyway. You're going to find they're probably moving away. They want to be with their mates, and then that the dynamics, I think, change again. And they start learning. Bye, I'm ready to fly the nest now. Don't need you.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they do.
Yeah. So, how would when you talk about that connectivity with your child, and how would you talk to the child? How would you have that conversation when they say, I want this and I want it now? How would you approach that in a better way? One where you're going to get a win-win, maybe.
Yeah, win-win, totally. Yeah. I feel what really helps, and what I find really helps again and again, is understanding, being curious about your child's point of view, and then expressing that you understand that point of view through empathy. And so if it was the biscuit thing, it would be something like, oh, it sounds like you really want another biscuit. What I'm hearing is you really want another biscuit, or just quite simply, you want another biscuit. And it's very grounded. It's not sympathy or poor you want another biscuit. It's very grounded, but it's very compassionate. And you're not, because you understand their point of view, doesn't mean you're going to comply with it or give way, so to speak. But you understand it. You're flexible enough to kind of walk out of your own shoes and walk around 180 degrees and see things from your toddler stroke, whatever age child's point of view. And you're able to embrace that and help your child feel, my parent sees me, they see me, they hear me, they love me, they understand me, even if I can't have what I want. And I think what that turns out to be is half the battle is about that. Half the battle is they want the biscuit. Half the battle is they want mum, who often is, to understand how much they want that biscuit. And if mum, shows that and expresses that and can, express that, then there's much less likely to be a tantrum or, an escalation of some kind. Yeah. And I think, that's still the case with my 16-year-old. It works. It works if it's genuine. At one level, there's a kind of formula aspect to it, but then it doesn't work. If you're just repeating, you're using the empathy tool or whatever, that just doesn't wash with children. But if it's genuine, so there's a genuine exploration, genuine curiosity about what your child might be feeling, and a genuine effort to express that sensitively, not as a tool, then it really does help, shall I say. It helps. Yeah. And it connects you both then.
Yes, and I think if we can teach children to do that and learn from ourselves, it's a valuable tool in adulthood, because again, so many arguments will continue because instead of empathizing with the other person,
yes,
and saying, oh, I hear that's a problem for you, I don't quite understand it, tell me more, or I didn't realize you felt that way. It's that empathy that the other person feels heard. But instead, what adults, we all tend to do is retaliate. And so, well, I don't, what's your problem? And then the other person is banging their head against the brick wall saying, but this is really big for, well, it's not a problem for me. But they're not listening to each other. And therefore they're not empathizing. And therefore the person who doesn't feel heard is going to feel really not even considered, not valued as a human being. So it's a great way of teaching our children, isn't it?
Exactly, because probably, most people don't do it because they haven't learned it. It's not something they receive from their parents. And yeah, absolutely, it's incredible how quickly children learn. I mean, I was talking to one client last year who was reflecting on her journey with me and saying that as she had introduced empathy, she was quite an educated client. She was a child psychotherapist, actually, but so I think once she got empathy, she was running with it. She really got it, and she introduced it, the next day kind of thing. And what she finds, she's a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old. She introduces the 3-year-old to help the 3-year-old with his younger brother. And what she found was that after a couple of hours, he started empathizing with his brother. Yeah. Instead of whacking him and snatching things, he was, oh, are you feeling a bit frustrated because you can't get that block in there? I mean, it's miraculous. It's as if he turned into a different, it's not as if, he actually did turn into a different brother within the space of a couple of hours, because she was repeating this empathy, and he was like, oh, this is cool. I'm going to try it out too. And totally. I think it is absolutely, it's useful in all communication, whether with adults or with children, and also with ourselves.
Yeah.
Because we frustrate ourselves sometimes, don't we? But when we can have empathy with ourselves and show understanding and and realize that, we're not perfect and all that, we make our own lives easier.
Yes. And I think the other thing is reminding ourselves that we're not going to get it right all the time.
No.
It's that compassion for ourselves, isn't it? Oh, I really didn't handle that very well with my child, and now what can I do? I'm a failure. It's not going to work, and they're going to feel badly about me, and all that other stuff. But we're human beings, and we make mistakes. So what do we learn from it?
Exactly.
What can we do better next time? Or even going back and having the conversation with them.
Yeah.
You know what? I was a bit concerned about that, not worried, but you say, that conversation where you got really annoyed. Well, I was just thinking about that, and I think there's nothing wrong in
absolutely. Yeah.
It's the other danger, isn't it? Well, it's gone and passed, and therefore, well, that's it. I can't. It's not backtracking, but it's actually it's empathizing, and it is keeping that.
It's acknowledging that we're acknowledging that we haven't maybe been perfect, and that they had a point of view, and repairing. Really, I think repair is so so valuable. And in fact, my son and I, but it's less though these days, I'm not quite sure why, but we used to constantly have these conversations, or not constantly, but regularly it would come. What I really meant was, and we'd go back over it and just reveal the underlying motivators, which are very rarely what you're saying on top, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that just repaired, so we could empathize with each other, and then job done. And it's interesting because I've never taught him to apologize or said, you must say you're sorry, because I think a kind of sorry is a lip service, is kind of quite empty. But occasionally when he does kind of, he's 16, he has a blowout, gets unreasonable about something, and I don't usually kind of come back and you did this, or how about that, or how about what you did there. But just recently he did have a bit of a blowout, and he just came back, I'm sorry, I was a bit unreasonable there. And it just arises naturally, I think, when we don't, when we show understanding, are willing to admit that we're wrong. I get it wrong. I mean, I'm a parenting expert, I still get it wrong, and but it's okay, we can all get it wrong and repair and get up and try again the next day.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really sound advice, because I think sometimes people feel that they can't go back and admit that they've, they've done something better. I think, oh, well, the time's passed. And I get that a lot with adults. And one other thing that came to mind was I was working with a couple who got teenage children. And one of the parents, when they were upset, they withdrew.
Mm-hmm.
And this could go on for several days.
Mm-hmm.
The problem was that the rest of the family were concerned because they didn't know what they'd done wrong.
Mm.
And I said to the parent, how about, could you sit down have a family get together and actually talk about this and say, you know what, I realise that what I do is effectively I kind of go and sulk. It looks like that, but it's because I'm so hurt, I have to withdraw.
Mm.
It's not because you've done anything wrong.
Mm.
And having that open conversation. Now that parent felt they couldn't do that, which I thought was quite sad.
Mm.
Because if we can say, you know what, there are times the way I behave is this is what I do when I'm upset, but I don't want it to reflect on you. It's not because you've done something wrong. Because once you have that, I think you've got the open conversations then, especially with older children.
Yeah. I guess we're all scared of vulnerability, aren't we? That's why we are reluctant to do those kinds of things, and recognizing that kind of recognition that we had that we're vulnerable, that we're hurting.
Yeah.
And that is, yeah.
Yes, I think you really hit a big one there, that vulnerability. We can't show our vulnerability because we've got to be strong as parents.
And be right.
Oh, yes.
Be right. Confession. I mean, I find it really hard to admit that I wasn't right. That's one of my things. And yeah, I know how tough that can be. And I think that is something that comes up with parents a lot, because they feel they need to be right and get it right with the children, and they can't admit to children that they may have got it wrong. I don't even think it's helpful to think of right and wrong, but
no,
it really just isn't helpful. But I think that's the thing, that they feel they have to maintain this authority as the one who knows stuff and gets it right, so that the children kind of can look up to them as that one. And actually, it's okay. You can get things wrong and not be that one, and children will connect with you, and find it easier to follow you, actually. But it's that I think slightly more traditional picture that we're the ones who know things and get it right, and God forbid that we get it wrong.
Yeah, I think that's a really big one, isn't it? And I think if we can allow ourselves to just say, I don't know, or I've got that wrong, or this is, when I went off and sulked for a couple of days, I realized that you must have felt really worried that you had done something wrong, and I didn't think that was a very nice thing to do, but this is how I function in the world, and I'm trying to work on it. What a gift that is to your children.
That's beautiful. Yeah,
If only
It's very
that parent could have
touching.
done it. If only they could have done it. But yeah, and I think it always has to be age appropriate, doesn't it? That,
Yes,
yeah,
we have to
yeah.
attune our language. Yeah.
Wow. I think we covered quite a lot today. What is one thing that, one tip that parents could take away? I know we've covered quite a few tips actually, but is there one thing that you think that you'd like to leave the listeners?
Yeah, I think so. There's one thing that I can offer to help parents get started with empathy, which is very simple. And I did mention it, but I'll kind of draw it out so that it really becomes something that parents can take away and try out, later today, tomorrow, which is if a child objects or resists, they say, I don't want to do that. I don't want you to go. I don't want to go back to school or whatever it is. Just repeat back to them what they've said. Aha, you don't want to do that. You don't want me to go. Aha, I get it. I hear what you're saying. You don't want to go back to school. In that kind of kind, neutral, but also grounded tone, that helps. And just see what happens. And usually sometimes children are completely kind of astounded, because usually we're trying to talk them out of their upset. We don't want them to be upset, but sometimes they just literally stand there open mouthed but yeah, see what happens. That's what I'd say to parents. Try that out.
Brilliant. I think that's, yes. Yeah, and it may not work every single time. It doesn't mean you give up and say that doesn't work. It is just trying it, different ways of trying it. And I think, it's not going to work every single time because it just isn't. That's not the way life is. But at least if you start thinking that way, I think it's going to make things easier. Yeah. Wow. So you talked about that you have on your website, you've got a meditation.
Yes, because this is a relationship podcast and we've been talking about relationships. My whole thing is about your relationship with your child. I have created a meditation called Reset Your Relationship with Your Child, which you can just download for free. It's only 9 minutes long, and it's one I did a version of when my son was younger, and some parents have had some astonishing results just from doing it when their child is asleep. So that's something I can recommend to parents, and it's 9 minutes long. It's on the homepage of my website. And
what's your website?
It's just my name, oonaalexander.co.uk.
Great. All the other details will be in the show notes, and I'll also put the link in. It'll be in there to your website. But thank you so much, Oona, for talking today. It's been a really interesting conversation.
It's been great, Wendy. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode. I'd love to hear from you and what you think, so do get in touch. If you'd like to learn more about me, how I help people who are struggling with issues relating to their personal life or relationships, as well as finding out how you can work with me, go to my website, www.wendycapewell.co.uk, where you can find my contact details and book a free call with me. You really don't have to struggle alone. Until next time, take care. Bye.